Hi, I'm Alara. My aunt once looked me straight in the eye and said, "We all agreed, you're not welcome at the reunion." I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stopped paying the property taxes on the very lake house they were celebrating in, but that wasn't the worst part. What hurt more was realizing they'd been planning my erasure long before that day. Quietly, collectively, while I paid the bills, stocked the dock, and kept their secrets. So, why does a family keep what you give but throw away who you are? Would you stay, or would you walk out and make them feel what you carried in silence for years? Let's talk about that. I checked my email that morning expecting the usual. Some group thread about who's bringing the cooler, who's renting the pontoon, what night we'd all cram onto Aunt Vivian's porch pretending we hadn't ghosted each other the whole year. But the inbox was empty. I refreshed it twice, then a third time out of habit, not hope. Still nothing. I stared at the screen a while longer, trying to tell myself maybe they hadn't started planning yet. Maybe they were waiting on something. But in my gut, I knew better. The silence wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated. Later that afternoon, I opened our shared family drive where we usually uploaded the boat playlist, the potluck sign-up, and that ridiculous spreadsheet my cousin Rowan made every year ranking who brought the best lake toys. The folder was gone. I didn't panic. I didn't message anyone. Not right away. I clicked around, tried an old invite link. Access denied. It didn't feel like a glitch. I sent a short text to Rowan. "Hey, did you take down the reunion folder?" No response. 42 minutes later, a message came in from Vivian. "Figured you'd be swamped with work this summer. Don't sweat the reunion. No, how are you? No, we missed you last year." Just a line meant to sound caring, and yet it felt like a gate slamming shut behind me. I didn't reply, but I took a screenshot. That night, I lay in bed longer than usual, phone face down on the nightstand. The quiet was heavier than normal. I wasn't crying. I don't cry over things that predictable anymore, but I felt something inside me rearrange. I'd seen this playbook before. Last year, I showed up late after a deadline ran long. I walked in with arms full of beach towels, a cooler of craft sodas I'd driven 2 hours to pick up, and not a single person looked up. The dock was packed, every Adirondack chair full. I ended up on the splintered picnic table with a paper cup and no coaster. "Look who finally decided to float in," someone mumbled. I didn't even catch who. "Doesn't matter." They all laughed. Back then, I told myself it wasn't intentional. People get sunburned. Reunion plans shift. Maybe they just forgot I hated cilantro. Or that I always brought the waterproof speaker no one ever acknowledged, but everyone paired to. But now it felt deliberate. Like a group decision had been made about me somewhere behind closed doors. Some digital vote I wasn't invited to join. I opened my laptop and pulled up my budgeting spreadsheet. I stared at the July tax line, $2,147 recurring every summer for the last 4 years. The same line had been there every season. Quiet, predictable, paid. They swam in that lake. They grilled on that deck. Celebrated graduations, engagements, even gender reveals on the dock I'd refinished. And not one of them thought I might want to sit in a chair again this year. I closed the file, didn't delete anything, just shut the screen and sat there. Still no yelling, no rage. But inside me, something was shifting. I thought about the word family, what it used to mean, what it's supposed to mean, and then I thought, if I'm not invited to be in it, why am I the one paying for it? I didn't stop the tax payment. Not that day. That would come later. But something cracked inside me, clean and quiet like ice on the lake in early spring. And I knew it wasn't going to freeze the same way again. I didn't text anyone. I didn't open social media to look for clues. I just sat in that quiet apartment of mine. No string lights, no fake lays, and I listened to the silence they left behind. Not a single call, not a single invite. And it hit me. They didn't forget. They decided. The voicemail came 5 days later. I'd just set down a grocery bag. Lemons, charcoal, and a 6-pack I probably wouldn't open. When the screen lit up. Vivian. It read in all caps because I never changed her contact name after upgrading my phone. I stood in my kitchen for a moment, the plastic bag still looped around my wrist, and hit play. Her tone was flat, a little too polite, like she was reading a line someone told her to memorize. The family talked, and we just think it might be easier if you don't come this year. It's nothing personal. We all agreed. You know how things get. We all agreed. Not I feel, not it's hard for me. No hesitation. No sorrow. Just a sentence that sounded like a verdict, not a conversation. I didn't drop the groceries. I didn't curse. I just set the bag down slowly, took off my coat, and replayed it twice. Then I hit save. Later that night, I opened our old group text. Me, Rowan, and 2 cousins. Only to find the name had changed to the real ones. Cute, subtle. My name wasn't listed in the members anymore. Just like that, I clicked on another thread. The one from last year labeled Lake Appaloosa, but it was gone. Not deleted, archived, moved somewhere I couldn't reach. I scrolled through my inbox and noticed the same pattern. No calendar invites, no email threads, no old reminders, not even the passive-aggressive notes Rowan used to send. The kind that said, "Don't forget to label your cooler." Unlike last year, it was like I'd been scrubbed clean from their July. And this time, there wasn't even the pretense of forgetting. They had removed me carefully, cleanly, like wiping fog off a windshield before driving someone else's route. It was about 10 p.m. when I finally cracked open a bottle of white and sat down in the silence. I was halfway through checking work emails when I saw a comment under one of my cousin Sky's posts. So glad everyone could be there for the vote. Hard but necessary vote. I clicked the post open. It was a group selfie. 14 smiling faces. Mostly familiar. All seated around Vivian's fire pit. The caption read, "Doing what's best for the whole family isn't always easy, but it's worth it." My stomach didn't sink. It stiffened like bracing for impact. I zoomed in. Rowan was holding up a s'mores skewer. Uncle Miles was laughing. Vivian sat at the head of the circle, her hand on Sky's shoulder like she'd just passed down the torch. There was no empty chair for me, no placeholder cup, no space held. They had a meeting without me and made a decision about me. They didn't think I'd find out, or maybe they just didn't care if I did. I closed the post, muted the group, and turned off my phone. The next morning, I listened to Vivian's voicemail again while brushing my teeth. She sounded rehearsed, like someone trying to break bad news without getting any on her clothes. I heard the line again. We all agreed. You're not welcome. There was no hesitation in her voice, no pause, no guilt. She might as well have said, "Your reservation has been canceled." I didn't call her back. I didn't text, but I opened a clean document on my laptop and started typing. Property taxes paid from 2019 to present. Lake Association dues last year. Dock repair May 2022, 1/2/20. Utilities paid for June-August. Down payment assist notarized August 2018. It wasn't rage that made me do it. It was clarity. If they were going to erase me from the story, I'd keep a copy for myself. After saving that spreadsheet, I shut my laptop and stared at my hands for a while. Palms open, fingertips twitching slightly, like they were trying to hold on to something that had already slipped away. A few hours later, sometime around lunch, Rowan's name lit up on my screen. A message short, precise, no emojis, no cushion. You always made things awkward. Honestly, it's better this way. Then another line like a footnote she'd been waiting years to write. You were never really good at being part of this family. I blinked at it once, then again. I didn't respond. I didn't forward it to anyone. I just took a screenshot and saved it in the same folder where I'd been tracking the rest of their quiet revisions of my place in their narrative. You don't have to shout when you're erasing someone. Whispered edits work just as well. That evening, I reheated some leftover gazpacho and flipped through a drawer looking for matches. I didn't know why. Maybe just something to do. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a memory from my photo app. 4 years ago, a picture of the reunion. Swag I'd shipped overnight from my condo in Charlotte to Vivian's lake house in Flat Rock. I'd stayed late at the office to afford those waterproof phone pouches. Rowan had casually admired back in March. A sun hat I'd found online in just the shade Vivian used to wear in her old sailing photos. But in the photos posted from that reunion morning, ones I saw only later through someone else's public album, the tags had been changed. From all of us, Rowan said proudly in one of the captions. Everyone was gathered on the dock clapping. I wasn't there. I wasn't mentioned. I was just folded into the collective, repackaged and sold as a group effort. Not one person corrected her, not even Vivian. That moment had lodged in the back of my mind like a splinter under a fingernail, sharp but ignorable. Until now. I set my phone face down on the table and stood up, suddenly restless. I walked to the window, peered out over the dim outline of the city below. Across the street, a couple had just finished stringing fairy lights along their balcony. Blue and white, nautical, the kind Vivian used to love. I hadn't bought a floaty. I hadn't even bothered with a beach towel this year. That same evening, maybe out of masochism, or maybe because I was tired of being surprised by what didn't shock me anymore, I pulled up Instagram and tapped into my aunt's page. The first post that greeted me was a picture of her boathouse. 14 chairs, tiki torches flickering, a watermelon in the center, my youngest cousin Sky, holding a tray of deviled eggs, smiling like she'd won something. The caption read, "Grateful for everyone who made this family whole again this summer." That word whole hit harder than anything Rowan had typed. Harder than Vivian's voicemail. Harder than the silence. I zoomed in on the photo. I recognized the place cards. Rowan's overdone calligraphy. The metallic Sharpie she'd used for years. There wasn't an empty chair. There wasn't a missing name. I wasn't expected. I wasn't wanted. I shut the app and reached for my calendar. There, still nestled between two deadlines, was my PTO approval for July 12th through the 17th. I'd requested it back in April. I'd even booked the rental car weeks ago just in case. I canceled the request. Then the car. It was non-refundable, but I didn't care. The thought of sitting in a parking lot wondering if anyone would meet me at the gate made my stomach twist. This wasn't a protest. This was a decision. They wanted a reunion without me, so they'd get it. The next day, I made myself a full breakfast. Avocado toast, iced coffee, even mango slices, and opened my banking app while sipping. The tax payment was scheduled to hit in 3 days. I stared at the number, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I finally asked myself the one question I'd never let fully land. Why was I still paying for a life I wasn't allowed to be in? It's funny the way exclusion works. It starts with subtle things. Forgotten texts, rearranged plans, missed birthdays you pretend weren't deliberate. But eventually it grows roots, and one morning you realize it's not just that they don't see you. They never did. I didn't move for a while after that question settled in me. Why was I still paying for a life I wasn't even invited to be part of? The thought didn't leave when I showered or when I walked to the corner market later for a new bag of coffee I didn't need. It sat with me steady and quiet like an answer already decided before I asked the question. That night, I didn't open Netflix or scroll through my phone. Instead, I pulled up my banking dashboard. There it was, scheduled like always, $2,847 set to leave my account 3 days from now. I clicked into the History tab. One by one, I scrolled backward. Payment after payment, season after season, 4 in total. Every transaction tagged Lakeview Property, Flat Rock, NC. They sat in that house, smiled in it, toasted rosé in it, called it ours without ever saying mine, but I was the one keeping the dock afloat quietly, consistently. That house was built with more than money. It was built with every don't worry. I got it that I never asked them to remember. I opened a different folder. Cloud Drive, password protected, scanned files, one after the other. And there it was, like a slap in the face. Warranty deed, Vivian Lake. I'd signed as a co-borrower so she could qualify for the loan. It was supposed to be temporary, a favor. She'd promised to sign over partial ownership once we got things stable. That conversation happened in the middle of a hardware run 4 years ago. Paint samples in my hand. Her voice easy and casual like it wasn't binding. I believed her because she was my aunt. But the paperwork was clear. My name wasn't on the title. I was just the one footing the bill. And for the first time, I let it land. I hadn't just been excluded from the reunion. I had been used systematically, quietly, and with a smile. I didn't cry. I didn't pace the apartment. I just clicked out of the file, pushed back from the desk, and sat in the silence. Around 9 that evening, my email pinged. A forwarded photo from my cousin Miles, probably meant for someone else. I almost deleted it without looking. But something in me paused. When I opened it, I recognized the boathouse immediately. Mine, or what used to feel like mine. The new floating dock I paid for. The custom Adirondacks I ordered. The same cedar siding I'd driven 3 hours to pick up, because Vivian said the local options were flimsy. 14 faces, full circle, torches burning. Everyone smiling like they were part of something sacred. The caption read, "In Vivian's home, where she raised us all." My chest didn't hurt, but something behind my eyes buzzed like a quiet static. I read it again. The words sat heavy in my throat. That boathouse, I paid for it. That fire pit, I hauled it from Charlotte with a trailer and a busted taillight. I checked the message thread. Not a single thank you. Not even a, "Hey, saw your gift come in." Just silence. I clicked back to my bank account. Paused the auto payment. Then I sat there. Not with vengeance, not with heat, but with something heavier. No one was going to send a letter asking why. No one was going to call me to see if I was okay. And I knew that. But they were going to notice eventually. Not because I made a scene, but because something they relied on, something they assumed would always just happen, was about to stop. I didn't send a warning. I didn't write a manifesto. I just opened a blank folder on my desktop and labeled it Exit Plan. Then I started filling it. Screenshots, receipts, deeds, emails. Because someday when the story gets told again, I wanted to be able to say, "Here, this is what I carried while you clapped for each other." After saving the last document to the Exit Plan folder, I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The room was still, the air inside it cooler than usual. I leaned against the counter, glass in hand, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock that always ran 3 minutes fast. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. I didn't owe them that. 2 days later, July 10th, I logged into my bank account and canceled the tax auto payment. Just like that, one click, no ceremony, no warning. The money stayed put, quiet in my checking account, as if relieved to finally have a purpose that didn't include silence and thankless sacrifice. I half expected a call, a text, a "Hey, did something happen?" But nothing came. Not from Vivian, not from Rowan, not even from one of the cousins who still used me as their emergency contact without ever checking in unless their cooler was empty. They didn't notice, or if they did, they didn't say anything, which only confirmed what I'd suspected. They had never imagined I was essential. I was background noise, an open tab on someone else's browser. They would find out soon enough. The next morning, while my coffee steeped, I pulled up the login for the utilities. Electric, water, internet, lake association dues all still in my name. Originally, Vivian had asked me to just help her out for a few seasons back when she retired from the library and claimed her pension, just until I hit 65. She'd said, "Give me some breathing room." That was 5 birthdays ago. I opened each account and clicked cancel service one by one, carefully documenting every confirmation number. I wasn't being petty. I was being clean. I forwarded every cancellation email to myself, CC'd a second inbox I rarely used, then closed the laptop. Let them call the utility companies. Let them explain how they'd never switched the accounts over, because they assumed the payments would just keep coming. Let them realize the water was never automatic. July 13th came without fanfare. I didn't hang lanterns. I didn't play reggae. I made ceviche from scratch and let it chill while I wrapped a gift for my neighbor's son, a kid who watered my plants whenever I traveled. By 6:30, I was curled up on the couch, bowl in my lap, when my phone buzzed. It was a group text I hadn't been part of in weeks, but one of the cousins must have looped me in by accident. Someone called Duke Energy. Power just went out mid-bonfire. Vivian is freaking yelling, "Everything's dark." I stared at the message. Then, like muscle memory, I opened my email and searched account closed. There it was, July 9th. Confirmation that service to the Flat Rock property would end at 7 p.m. reunion eve. Sub 14 p.m., and they were already in darkness. I didn't reply. I didn't smile. I just leaned back, the bowl of ceviche still cool in my lap, and whispered to no one. They thought comfort was free. An hour later, another message came through. "Elara, did you do this?" I let the phone go dark in my hand. Because the answer didn't need to be spoken, they knew. The second that house blinked out like a snuffed torch, they knew. Rowan must have screamed. Vivian probably called customer service, flustered, trying to fake polite outrage. "What do you mean the account's inactive?" "Well, ma'am, you're not listed as the primary or secondary holder." And it would dawn on her like the lights weren't going to. I imagined them lighting citronella candles, scrambling for headlamps while guests milled around uncomfortably on the dock I paid to rebuild. I wondered if Rowan still told people she picked out the cedar I hauled across 2 counties. Maybe now she'd remember who installed the damn thing. I didn't check social media. I didn't expect an apology. That's not how this family operates. We rewrite the story and pretend we meant well. Instead, I opened my digital planner and typed in the day. July 13th, first reunion, not subsidizing betrayal. I brewed another cup of coffee. The night was quiet, uninterrupted, the kind of silence that didn't ache anymore. Then around 10:20, a text from my cousin Jude arrived. "Hey, did something happen? Aunt Vivian is losing it." I stared at it for a long minute. I could have answered. I could have said, "Ask her who kept the dock afloat for 4 years, or tell her Elara said happy splashing." But instead, I put the phone down, turned off the lamp, and let the dark stay a little longer than usual because I wasn't punishing them. I was finally choosing myself. The next morning, while stirring oat milk into my coffee, my phone buzzed with a message from a colleague I barely talked to outside stand-ups. He'd forwarded me a link to a local lifestyle blog. Vivian Lake hosts annual charity lake cleanup celebrating summer stewardship in Flat Rock. I clicked it open, and there it was. A full-color photo, banner headline, and a smiling Vivian. Her arms around Rowan standing on the very dock I paid for. My cedar planks, my refinished boathouse, my custom string lights they once called too bright, until they became the perfect photo backdrop. Not one mention of my name. Not even a line saying the house belonged to someone else. The caption beneath the photo read, "Special thanks to the Lake family for opening their beautiful waterfront to the community." I didn't even realize I was laughing until I heard myself. Not a joyful sound, short, bitter, disbelieving. Vivian had outdone herself. That wasn't just omission. That was theft in sundresses and pressed khakis. That afternoon, I sat on the balcony for a while, letting the heat shimmer off the pavement. The air felt more honest than anything that had come from that lake house in years. Around 4, I got a private message from Jude, my youngest cousin, 24. A little awkward, always too quiet around the older relatives, but sharp when he spoke. His message was simple. "I need to show you something." I didn't agree with what they did. I recorded it. Attached was an audio file. I hesitated a second, then pressed play. Rowan's voice came through first, clipped flat. She's dramatic. Everything she does feels like a performance, like she wants a medal for showing up. Then Vivian chimed in. "She's not really family. She's just convenient." Laughter. Actual laughter. Then Miles's voice. Slippery as always. "Don't stir the pot. Keep her name on the papers. It's clean. No need to rock the boat." The recording ended there. No one objected. No one said, "Hey, that's out of line." They just laughed and moved on. I sat with that clip in my hands for a long while. I'd always suspected they had meetings about me. I'd felt it in how they chose their words, how they skipped mine. But hearing it, hearing my aunt call me convenient was something else entirely. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up putting together a package. I uploaded the audio clip to a clean, anonymous Google Drive. Then I opened a new document, entitled its Statement of Financial Support 2018 to present. Line by line, I laid it out. Property taxes, association dues, renovation expenses, utility history, receipts, dates, bank statements, all tied directly to me. Then I addressed it quietly to 3 inboxes: Miles's boss at the credit union, the charity organizer who ran the lake cleanup, a local journalist I'd worked with years ago on a fundraiser. No signature. No subject line that said vengeance. Just facts. Truth they couldn't edit out. Then I closed the laptop and made hibiscus tea with lime, as if I hadn't just burned down their favorite illusion. By the following evening, the reactions began to drip in. The charity page updated its website. Vivian's name vanished from the host credits. Jude texted, "They're scrambling. Rowan's accusing me of sabotage. Vivian's panicking. Miles has been pulled into a meeting." I sipped my tea and replied simply, "I didn't declare war. I declared independence." An hour later, a new email came in. Subject line, tax inquiry. Urgent response requested from the county assessor. Official tone flagged as high priority. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to my small closet, pulled down the storage box where I kept old postcards and photo prints from years ago. Ones with captions like, "To the best niece and couldn't have done it without you." I laid them on the table and one by one I tore them in half. Not out of anger, but because they were fiction. I wasn't erasing history. I was finally giving it an accurate headline. The next morning, after brushing off the last of the torn card pieces from my kitchen table, I sat down at my desk, opened my email, and began typing. I didn't write with venom. There was no anger in my fingers, only precision. I've been removed from the family, so I've removed myself from the financials. The lake house no longer concerns me. No hello, no closing signature, no attached explanation to soften the blow. I didn't need their understanding. That ship had set sail the moment they held a vote behind my back. I attached a PDF, a meticulous outline of every dollar I'd invested in that house and them. Tax payments, utilities, insurance, even the dock cushions Vivian insisted were too bright, before replacing them with the exact pattern I'd already bought. Subject line, exit with receipts. Then I hit send. 24 minutes later, my phone lit up like a flare. "Rowan was first. You're destroying everything Vivian built." That part made me laugh. I hadn't destroyed anything. I just unplugged it. It wasn't my fault they never learned how to keep the dock afloat without me. "Then Vivian, how could you humiliate me like this?" "We're still your family." Still, like there was ever a pause between who they pretended to be and what they actually were. I didn't reply. Miles never called, probably too busy talking to compliance after the anonymous report landed on his supervisor's desk with his exact quote from the recording. "Keep her on the papers. No need to rock the boat." The charity organizer released a statement that same afternoon. "We've been made aware of inconsistencies regarding our recent donor recognition and have updated our records to reflect the correct sources of support." No names mentioned, but no need. The timeline spoke for itself. That night, I walked 2 blocks to Mrs. Delgado's house, the elderly neighbor who'd lived next to Vivian for over a decade. She'd always waved politely, but never said much beyond the basics. This time she opened the door before I knocked. "I saw the blog," she said, holding out a small plate of bizcochitos. "And I figured you could use someone who's not surprised." We sat on her porch glider with the cookies between us and a thick quilt over our knees. She sipped horchata from a mason jar and gave me the kind of look people save for funerals. "One part respect, one part sorrow. I've lived next to your aunt for 15 years, Mrs. Delgado said slowly. "You were always the steady one. That's why she tried so hard to erase you. Couldn't control you, couldn't shape you, so she cut around you." I didn't speak for a moment. Then I nodded once and whispered, "She almost succeeded." Mrs. Delgado smiled gently, the way people do when they've seen enough in life to know what winning really looks like. "She didn't," she said. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I used to keep every photo that proved I'd belonged. The group snapshots from reunions I wasn't really part of. The holiday cards that listed everyone's name but mine. Even though I was the one who printed them, I didn't burn them. I didn't tear them like the postcards. I just threw them out straight into the trash. No drama. Not because they made me angry, because they didn't matter anymore. Later that evening, I lit a candle in the kitchen. Not for atmosphere, but to remind myself that I could make light too. That my space was warm, even when theirs had gone cold. Just as I sat down on the couch, phone buzzing against the cushion, I glanced at the screen. Jude, Grandma just asked if you were okay. Should I tell her the truth? I stared at the message for a while, then typed back. Tell her I'm more than okay. Tell her I'm finally visible. The message delivered. No dots of reply, no follow-up. But I didn't need one because for once I wasn't trying to be heard. I was simply done trying to disappear. I set the phone back on the couch cushion and sat there for a few more minutes, watching the sunset bleed orange across the skyline. A car passed slowly below, headlights stretching long across the pavement, then disappearing. No horns, no music, just the hush of a city settling into summer. The next morning I woke up early without an alarm. No one was expecting me, no plans to chase, no guilt to pretend wasn't sitting just under my skin. I made coffee, pulled on a linen shirt, and drove into town. The county office wasn't busy. Most people were already off for the holiday weekend. I walked up to the counter with my folder in hand. The one I'd labeled in red marker, tax transfer. The clerk greeted me with a smile too wide for the hour. I need to formally transfer responsibility for a lien I co-signed, I said. She blinked. Would you like to schedule a meeting with one of our assessors to review? No, I don't need to review anything. Just process the transfer. She hesitated, fingers poised above her keyboard. This means you'll be removing your name and assigning all financial liability to Vivian Lake, I said calmly. She's the listed owner of the property. She'll handle things from now on. You understand you're waiving all rights to that asset? I understand, I said, handing her the notarized form I'd prepared the week before. Trust me, I understand better than anyone else. I signed where she pointed, handed over the documentation, and walked out. No victory music, no slow-motion applause, just the soft shuffle of my sandals across the tile and the jingle of the door behind me as I stepped into the heat. I didn't post about it, didn't text. I didn't owe anyone an announcement. Instead, I went home and did something so simple it felt radical. I cooked myself a real lunch. Tostadas, fresh salsa, iced hibiscus. I curled up with a book I'd been meaning to finish since spring. And when I looked around my condo and saw no string lights, no floaties to inflate, no sand to sweep, I didn't feel the absence. I felt release. Reunion morning arrived with heat so thick it looked like haze across the window panes. I opened the blinds and let the quiet in. No notifications, no guilt-tripped invites, no last-minute requests for just one bag of ice or can you pick up a case of water. Just the steady hum of my space, my rules, my name on the lease. I brewed coffee slowly, like a ritual, wrapped myself in a robe that didn't smell like anyone but me. I looked out over the rooftops beyond the parking lot and whispered aloud this year, no one's disappointed in me, because no one's demanding I be someone else. And that was enough. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was quieter than either of those things. Like stepping out of a riptide and realizing you'd been swimming against it for years. Around noon, as I was pouring the last of the coffee into my mug, a thought surfaced. They probably didn't think I'd follow through. They probably laughed, called it a bluff, assumed the money would keep flowing. But a week later, back in Flat Rock, a certified letter landed in the mailbox at the lake house with the cedar shutters I once believed held memories worth protecting. Rowan brought it inside, opened it with a sigh, and read aloud the change of responsibility. Vivian just sat there stone-faced. No rage, no apology. She really did it, Rowan muttered. Vivian said nothing because what could she say? For once, there was no one left to blame. I hadn't slammed a door. I hadn't made a speech. I had simply stepped aside and left the weight where it belonged. I imagined that moment often, not to savor it, but to remember what quiet justice looks like. Later that evening, Jude texted again. "They're asking if you're coming back next year." I waited a moment before answering, then typed, "They should worry more about how they'll keep the dock afloat." I didn't add a smiley face. I didn't soften it. Some truths stand best on their own. The next week moved slowly, like summer stretching itself across the days just to prove it could. I kept to myself, slept with the balcony door cracked open, cooked meals that filled the condo with smells I remembered from my childhood, but hadn't tasted at my aunt's table in years. Real meals, not potluck dishes, where love was measured by recipes and competitiveness. One afternoon I checked the mail and found a sky blue envelope with my name written in silver gel pen. The handwriting was unmistakable, loopy, tidy, a little too perfect to be warm. Inside was a folded card. No lake graphics, just embossed sailboats on thick paper. A card meant to look thoughtful, expensive, heavy with effort, light on truth. It read, "I know I've made mistakes. I hope one day you'll float back to this dock again. Love, Aunt Vivian." No apology, no acknowledgement, just hope hanging out there like it had been earned. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because I needed to feel what it stirred in me, and what I felt wasn't anger. I folded the card carefully and slid it into the back of a drawer, not the trash. That small difference mattered to me. I hadn't stopped caring entirely. I just stopped negotiating my worth for a chair they didn't offer in good faith. Forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't about them. It was about what I didn't want to carry anymore. A few days later, Jude knocked on my door with a Tupperware of tres leches and a half-finished friendship bracelet dangling from his wrist. I let him in without a word, and he flopped down on my couch like he'd always belonged there. We didn't talk about the lake house. Instead, we talked about his grad school applications, something about coastal erosion and collective memory, then the heat, then how good the coffee tasted from the new shop down the block. Halfway through a second cup, he said, "They still don't understand why you left." I didn't look up from the thread I'd started pulling from the hem of a throw pillow. "I didn't leave," I said. "I just stopped chasing people who stood still." He nodded, then leaned back against the cushions. "You know, Grandma asks about you. Not in a guilt trip kind of way. Just like she's remembering something she forgot to hold on to." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just said, "Thanks for telling me." We didn't hug when he left. It wasn't that kind of moment, but when the door clicked shut behind him, the silence that followed felt more like space than emptiness. Meanwhile, back in Flat Rock, Vivian was now writing the tax checks herself. Rowan had taken over handling the association filings. The lake house, from what I heard, still stood, still held reunions, still had its dock, its over-decorated tiki bar, and its familiar smell of sunscreen and cedar. But the air in it had changed. They didn't talk about me, but my name lingered in the stories they edited around, in the gaps between traditions, in the questions no one asked out loud. Sometimes absence is louder than presence. I updated my legal records that month, changed my mailing address, listed Jude as my emergency contact, noted the day I'd signed off from the lien. I wrote it on the corner of my wall calendar in pen, 1 year free. No balloons, no sparkling water, just quiet acknowledgement. On the first truly cool day of August, I took a walk through the greenway behind my building. The air had that kind of crisp that made your lungs straighten out. It bit at the back of my throat, but it also woke something up. I stopped at the top of the hill and looked out across the creek below. Some houses you leave behind, some houses you outgrow. And either way, they stop feeling like home the moment you stop asking to be let back in. Before we part ways, let me say this. Leaving that lake house wasn't the hardest thing I've done. Learning to live in peace without seeking permission, that was harder. For most of my life, I believed loyalty meant silence, that staying quiet was strength, that if I gave enough, loved hard enough, paid long enough, they'd see me. They didn't, and maybe they never will. But I learned something far more valuable than approval. You don't need a chair at someone else's fire pit to know your worth. You can build your own and serve peace, not pain. If you've ever been the one holding the family together while they made you feel like the problem, I want you to hear this. You're not dramatic. You're just done being diminished. Sometimes stepping away isn't giving up. It's coming home to yourself. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a family, a friend group, or a community that made you feel small? What helped you choose peace over proving yourself? Drop your story in the comments. If this video spoke to your heart, type 1, or tell me where you're watching from. I read every message, and if it didn't quite land, tell me why. I'm always here to listen. Just like I hope someone had been for me. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more ahead, more stories that heal, more voices that rise, and more truth we're finally ready to tell. This isn't goodbye. This is just the start of you choosing.